Hey, welcome to the Living in the PNW podcast. Hey, David, we're doing a podcast. Imagine that. So we're doing this podcast for a reason. Not only do we want to show you all the coolest upcoming communities and let you see what's going on, but we also want to help to educate you in the process of what it looks like to buy a new home. So right now we're recording this podcast at the beginning of 2025, and I know that there's changes over time, but we're hoping this information is going to stay relevant for quite some time. Let's see, David, right off the bat, I'm just going to say that that folks at home don't know what it really looks like to buy a new construction home and what that process is, and even the reason for it. They have some ideas that it's way more expensive than everything else, but we know on the inside that it's really not once you take repairs into account. So let's walk them through this. Like, what does it look like to buy a new construction home as a homeowner right now?
Yeah, Kevin, and really appreciate that. For sure, at Living in PNW, our goal is to educate and reflect on a lot of highlights. And today, yeah, I think it's awesome just to talk about the buying process. All of us, we start in the buying process and kind of have to move through the process. And it's really important to kind of know all the initial steps and things going work when you moving forward. I call it kind of the vendor list whenever you're trying to achieve something, whether fixing your car or your house or anything in life, you kind of have a vendor list. And when you buy a home, it's like, who do you really need? All participants in the process. So when you're buying a new home, there's going to be a builder involved, there's going to be a loan officer involved, there's going to be a real estate broker involved, there's going to be a title company involved, in the whole process of getting you and oftentimes people ask who comes before. I would say they all kind of come together, especially in the very initial process. And everybody says, before starting to build a home, almost 60% of your energy is spent on the beginning of the process. So it is very crucial to understand, like, it'll take a whole team to kickstart you and your decision making about buying a home. So again, I want to go through the vendor list. It's going to be a title rep that's going to be involved. You're going to have a loan officer. You're going to have a broker that represents you. There's going to be probably a broker who represents the builder. Oftentimes, there's a builder involved and also a designer. And it seems like it might be a lot, but buying a house is a big step in life and a big investment. So you want to have all these professional participating parties in the decision making process.
That's 1,000% accurate. There's so many people involved, and I don't think that most folks really understand that there's a huge list. The list is even longer than that. There's insurance agents, there's
Mm-hmm.
inspectors, there's
Yes.
appraisers, there's a huge list of people that come into play here. So what that process looks like has got to be a little bit different, I think, than what people normally think. They sort of do it backwards, and I'm just taking the kid gloves off. People usually go backwards in this process, and they say, okay, well, let's find the house first, and then we'll worry about like the agent or whatever, or maybe we'll get a random agent sent to us from the big box search engine website. And then they got to go through that. And boy, that can really lead people into a lot of pitfalls, especially when they don't have an agent that understands new construction or knows how it
Mm-hmm.
goes. Right. So instead of just looking for the house, like, it's okay to look around and kind of see who the builders are and what their stuff looks like. But people often make a mistake of walking into the builder's office without an agent with them. And then they end up roped into something that 90% of the time is the wrong house or the wrong type of investment. So, in your experience, what can people do to better prepare themselves to make sure that they're talking to the right people in the first place?
I would say definitely when you're starting the process of buying a home, there's a lot of homework that people and they everybody says a lot of homework is done online. A lot of people go online and they do a lot of research and then they actually start going into the field and start looking at homes and assessing communities. And just like you mentioned, Kevin, it's very important that out the gate you kind of have an understanding of all the contributing people who are going to be partakers in this process. Because the minute you're out there starting to look at things, you're going to come across, the inside salesperson of the builder. You might see the builder himself in the community. You got to understand, is it a national builder? Is it a local builder? There's a lot of, things that you'll have to start to consider while buying a home. So, yes, it's very important to have a broker involved on the buying side to educate you. And that is what we're trying to do here through our podcasts and so forth. Get as much information out there or receive as much information as you can on the whole buying process, because there are certain steps. So a lot of research happens online, and then people start to go into the market. Once you start going into the market, you're going to start meeting these people who are participants in creating and assisting in the transaction. To be fair, it's good to be as transparent as possible. Whether you're just saying, "Hey, we're just not looking," or "Hey, we're going to be in a period where we are committed and seeking out professional advice." So, from a buyer standpoint, the more transparent you are with either the brokers or the lenders or the builders that you're working with, I think the smoother the transaction happens for each person.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of transactions go sideways because of the agent not being able to properly prepare their
Mm-hmm.
client and educate them about the process, be able to kind of set expectations and help to manage
Mm-hmm.
them as they go along, and being able to clearly communicate on that level what the process looks like and what it is they're going through. And there's some nuance there. There's definitely a lot of changes and a lot of different processes, right? Some of the
Mm-hmm.
builders are just kind of, oh, we're on the MLS. And some of them are saying, we're not even dealing with standard paperwork. We're writing our
Mm-hmm.
own, and that's all there is to it, and which is a little bit more risky, if you ask me. But that's just
Mm-hmm.
my take on it. But I'm dealing with one of those right now, where yeah, I have a client who went and they looked around and they got locked in on one builder because they liked what it looked like. And as time went on and they learned more about the builder, they're going, oh wow, I might have been in the wrong place to begin with, and not even
Mm-hmm.
knowing what else to look
Yeah.
at. So having
Mm-hmm.
that agent that like knows who everyone is so helpful to,
Absolutely.
for them.
And and
Hmm.
I think like buyers really have to understand, like they're investing a lot of money and time and energy to buying a home, right? So it's important to be fair to yourself and just make that true assessment, to what you're doing. But yeah, I mean, and then when buyers go out there in the market after they've done a lot of online, there is a, if you talk just new homes, there is a huge, differentiation between, your national builders and your local builders, and then how they do processes and so forth. So, but both will have oftentimes an inside salesperson who would represent them and who would help you with the processes. And our goal is also, to keep rolling out that education and kind of have these interviews recorded so that buyers can feel a lot more comfortable when they're sitting down for the first time. Most brokers who have experience in the new homes, they do have a higher level of confidence, and they do understand how to help their clients move through a national contract or move through a local builder contract and processes to help buyers. And I mean, again, you got to understand, like, most of the energy is spent at the beginning usually and at the end of the buying process. So it's very important first for us brokers to spend that time with clients and buyers should spend the time and the energy understanding that those are like the crucial moments of a transaction timeline.
Yeah, if you don't hit the timelines right on, you can lose a lot of money and lose
Mm-hmm.
a lot of understanding. And those timelines, they actually vary wildly based on a whole bunch of stuff. So if you have a random agent that doesn't know what they're talking about in new construction, if they can't tell you what time of year they can and can't start the foundation, or how long it takes for that to cure, or what that timeline is, then maybe they're not the one for the job. And you really got to like got to take a look at that. I mean, all of them want to make a sale. Don't get me wrong. There's no agent out there that doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are thinking about buying a new home and you don't have an agent who's really laid out for you, okay, well, that means you have to sell this house, or we have to determine if you have to sell this
Mm-hmm.
house, or if we're going to do an asset depletion loan, or what type of loan stuff is going to be in place first. Like all
Mm-hmm.
that has to get lined up before you really even start the communication with the builder. And depending on the builder, you might be talking to them before you might be talking to them in November when they can't even put a shovel in the
Mm-hmm.
ground to start building a foundation. So you don't want to put your house up for sale in November. So there's actually a lot of planning that goes into it. And so what are some of the things in your experience, David, that people need to look for when they're buying homes here in the area, especially with the larger builder versus the smaller local builder?
Yeah, buyers need to have understanding that if it's a national builder, they operate like a corporate, right? So there's divisions, there's people kind of in charge of each category. So whenever you're working with a national builder, just think about like this is corporate. You're not going to get maybe so much in person, contribution. It's more corporate. Hey, we do this like this everywhere. This is corporate. This is how it's done. When you're working with local builders, it's a lot easier. It's not a corporate mindset. It's more of a mindset. Hey, here's a builder. He's looking to sell a home. Let's figure out. There's a lot more flexibility. So if you can have the right mindset, you can set right expectations for yourself when you're entering or trying to work. Whether it's a broker or a buyer, they really have to understand that mindset. That once you're moving into a national, it's more corporate operated. There's
Right.
a lot more people in charge, a lot more people to report to on a national builder. There's certain things they can do, there's certain things they can't do, and so forth. And that salesperson, it's not usually their fault. It's just that's how the system is set up, and you just have to work within their framework of corporate all the way down to you, the buyer. And you can try to squeeze, you can try to push and pinch, but the chances is you're kind of faced off on trying to push against the corporate, which is really tough.
It is. It is really tough, and there's a lot of nuance. Like David, like you're saying, David, I totally agree with you there. There's so many little steps. There's so many things along the way that can go a bunch of different directions, and so it's so important to have that good plan ahead of time, to have a good team, to know
Hmm.
who these players are going to be in the process. And so I'm just going to boil it all down to one scenario. Now, let's pretend it was your home. All right, David, if you were in a situation where you live in a home now, you own it, um,
Hmm.
got a bunch of equity in it, maybe you got a small mortgage
Hmm.
payment left,
Hmm.
and you want to buy or build a new construction home, choose all of your finishes, choose the layouts and
Hmm.
stuff, what would your process be? What's the most successful way that people can approach this? In what order to make this happen? And then what's the timelines like?
So for most buyers, like we mentioned, it would start online. A lot of buyers do a lot of online searches. Then it would be drive-bys. A lot of buyers can cut out their products just by driving. If you can just drive neighborhoods, if you can just drive, whether it's new homes or resale, just by driving the community, you can get a vibe. And then after that, you're determining everything else, the features, the schools, where it's located, what's it's accommodating. Are you looking for a two-story, are you looking for a one-story home? So then you start to bring everything else down the funnel as what I would personally be determining that I'm looking for. But yeah, it would start online, then I would say doing drive-bys, and then after that, it's really sitting down and kind of understanding, like we mentioned, all your vendors or all the players involved. So if I need to hire a broker, then it's okay, go out there, be in front of one brokers, two brokers, three brokers, whatever you feel, is really going to be the match. And again, just be as transparent as possible. Just say, we're a fit or we're not a fit, and move through understanding all the partners that are going to be involved in assisting um, the buyer or myself right now. I would say in the market of buying a home. So buyers, they need all these vendors. It's not like oftentimes buyers think like, oh, I could save money if I do this, or there's no cutting corners. Like, you need everybody in the industry to help you facilitate the transactions and be a partaker in the process. So I guess I would say don't try to shy or run away or try to think you can cut corners. Just understand like how do you best partner with vendors like the inspector, the appraiser, the buyer's broker, the listing broker, right, the loan officer, and so forth. Just figure out the
Right.
best way to partner with everyone to make this, smoother process.
It sounds like a lot of that's going to come down to the agent that they're using
Yes.
in order to help them walk through this evaluation
Mm-hmm.
process. And I know
Absolutely.
the new construction specialist agents, not the ones that are in the builder's office, but the ones that actually work in the market.
Mm-hmm.
We know who these different builders are and who the different vibes are. So I know for me, if my client goes and drives through a neighborhood and says, "Oh, it's too much like this, and I want it to be a little more like that," I know of
Mm-hmm.
about 15 different neighborhoods that might fit
Exactly.
their this and that categories, but all of them have the same question: is like timing. How should they time this thing? If they got to sell the house that they're in and then buy the new house, well, if they do like a bridge loan, that could end up costing a lot more money on top. So a lot of people who are buying
Correct.
new construction right now, the majority of people buying new construction are really looking for that to be like the last home that they want to buy. They don't want to overturn homes a whole lot. They want to be in there and live in it. And that's a very common theme. Whereas maybe 10 years ago, people were thinking about move up and swap and change stuff. But now it's a little bit different. So what advice would you give people who have a home to sell who are buying a new construction as far as a timeline? When should they put it on the market? What do they got to do?
I mean, what I can say is timing's. It puts a lot of stress on the situation, on the transaction. So the more you can communicate between the whole process, the better it's just off for everyone. As it goes to building homes, yes, it takes about 3 to 6 months just to start the process, and about another 6 months to build the home, depending on the size of the home and so forth. So all the upfront work is about 3 months, and then construction usually takes about 6 to 8 months, depending where you're building and what time of the year you're breaking ground on your home. But yes, facilitating the time and then looking at, okay, if we take our resale home to the market, what's the current days on market, so you can time that. But all I could say is, it's the hard one of the harder transactions when people sell and buy simultaneously, but it's
Sure.
easier done in new home sales than it usually is done on regular transactions. So we do have a lot of bump offers, that we facilitate, and I know you do yourself, Kevin,
Mm.
and a lot of brokers out there. But yes, timing for a smoother transaction to take place is having all those parties that are involved in the transaction collaborating and talking. And I mean, just from a simple retrospective, just putting everybody in an email chain every single week and just, blasting and making sure all the parties are aware of everything that is taking place.
And as far as that's great advice. Totally is. Communication is paramount. Can't not communicate well in this situation, or
Mm-hmm.
things will go very, very sideways. And as far as money goes, because that's always the people's question, is when they're buying a new construction home, because it's such a long process. When are they having to come up with money? At what stages to complete the transaction?
So there's always some level of earnest money deposit in the beginning, and then it depends on how much upgrades you're willing to do throughout the process of the build. But if people are truly trying to, do a lot more customization, that's where, a lot of the earnest money goes hard, or what we mean is non-refundable or released to the builder. So in these stages, yes, most buyers have an initial deposit in the beginning. And if nothing much out of that contract, as we call them, change orders, has changed, earnest money usually kind of stays pretty consistent. But if there's a lot of change orders throughout the construction process, this is where, earnest money becomes part of the negotiation also.
In that earnest money deposit, is it similar to resale where it's usually 1% of the price of the whole thing, or does it look different in the new construction arena?
Typically, yes, unless again we're talking about mid customization or like full blown customization. Then there's definitely some risk factors that the builder is taking. That he will, for example, like I always say, like extreme. You want the house to be yellow, right? Or you want the house to be all green, or something like. I'm not saying that I've seen a yellow house. I don't think so. But what I'm just saying is that people do want to have some change orders, and in that retrospect it does affect earnest money, because that's the only way like a builder can truly first feel secure and then have some level of compensation for that specific change.
Well, thank you so much for bringing clarity to that. That I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who've had that question in their head and they're trying to figure out what is this and how much and by when. So the earnest
Mm-hmm.
money is up front right away. And if you got a whole bunch of like really custom stuff, you want a marble pool, all this stuff that's going to run the builder's
Mm-hmm.
prices up for inventory of materials that they don't usually stock, then that might be a little bit of a higher number up front to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then for the most part, they don't really need to come with money again until it's time for closing. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's
So
true. Yes.
they can put in their earnest money deposit and expect that it's going to be 6 to 9 months or more, depending on the season, time of year,
Correct.
before they actually have to have it all done and all completed. So
Mm-hmm.
that gives them
Mm-hmm.
time to work on paring down their whatever it is they want to bring to the new place or to get ready for it. But also, that's kind of a challenge because it sort of sets the clock, but it also sets that freeze on your credit. So once you put down that earnest money deposit and you've been pre-approved for this whole construction loan, you do not go out and buy all the furniture for the new house until it's
Mm-hmm.
closed. You don't
Mm-hmm.
go out and buy the new cars to park in the new garage until you have the keys to that
Correct.
garage, because your credit is super important and you got to pay close attention to it here.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who have watched today, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Living in the PNW podcast, where we are talking all things new construction that the homeowners and home buyers out there need to know about the process of buying a new construction. If you want to get more information about any of this or just ask questions, look down below the video. There's a link. Click the link. It'll take you to our page. You fill out the little form, and we'd love to get in contact. We'll have a one-on-one meeting with you, help you to answer any kind of questions that you've got. We're really here just as a source of knowledge and information for the consumers out there, and to help to be the bridge in between all of these incredible builders and you, our viewers and listeners. Thanks very much for
Mm-hmm.
tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you.